If you are an intermediate or advanced level English learner who likes to keep up to date with world news, I think you're going to really enjoy this podcast episode and video where we're going to discuss a current world event, the mass protest in Iran at the moment over the death of a young woman in police custody. And we're going to look at vocabulary related to women's rights and protests in general. My name is Ruth Whittle. I am the founder of English with Change, helping you build a confident voice in English so you can make positive change in your life with better English and also use your voice in English to make a positive difference in the world. So just a quick disclaimer that I by no means am an expert in this topic. I've done a bit of reading and research before filming this and trying to be as up to date as I can. But please, I do apologize if I mispronounce any of the names, if I get any of the facts wrong. But I will link my sources in the description and show notes. Even though I don't know all the facts, I think I still have a responsibility as someone who is a feminist based in the West to be in solidarity with these brave women and men as well who are burning the hijab and veil in protest against their own government regime. We have had our own movements in the West, like the Me Too movement, where we spoke about my body, my rights. Well, it's the same for Iran, and this is their moment which needs to be highlighted and spoken about in the rest of the world. So that is what I hope to do in this video. So just to give you a bit of background about the situation. So earlier this month, the 15th of September, Mahsa Amini died in police custody. She had been arrested because she was not, by the morality police, wearing her hijab correctly because she was showing a little bit of hair while she was wearing the headscarf. And she was beaten and taken into police custody and later died there. And that has really been something that has been building in Iran. When this death happened, for the Iranian people, enough was enough. And this was a turning point for Iranian people to fight against the Iranian regime. The compulsory wearing of the hijab is a pillar of the Islamic Republic, and it is used as a tool really to control all of society, to control women, and that they cannot go to school or work or contribute in politics without wearing this headscarf. So it has been for many decades a way of controlling the population. And what's been really amazing to see is women burning their veil in protest against this, shouting the slogan, "Woman, Life, Freedom." And so they're fighting for gender equality here. So now what I would like to do is to share with you some pieces of vocabulary to talk about women's rights and to talk about these protests in Iran at the moment. And I'm going to do this by looking at 3 recent headlines from the news. And the first headline is, and I'm going to read it, Hillary Clinton calls out horrific Iran regime, hails women for standing up against it. So in this headline, there are actually 2 phrasal verbs that I want to discuss and also 1 strong verb. So the first one, Hillary Clinton calls out. So to call out means to criticize someone about something that they have said or done and to challenge them to explain it. So in the headline, Hillary Clinton calls out the Iranian regime. She is challenging the regime to explain what they have done to women, how they have controlled women, and stop their freedom. As I was going through these phrasal verbs, it reminded me of an episode I did last year in my podcast, one of the first ones, which was quite popular. It was about how to talk about feminism in English. So I'm going to link that podcast episode in the description. I also have a video that I did recently on discrimination in the workplace. And I think I do use call out in it and also some other phrasal verbs that come up. So I think this is something you can check out after this video to hear more examples of the same phrasal verb. So another example that you could use for call out is she called him out for his sexist remark, or calling him out in front of everyone wasn't very fair. So yeah, that is the first phrasal verb in this headline. The second phrasal verb in this headline, she hails women to stand up against the regime, basically. And to stand up against someone or something means to actively defy, confront, or oppose someone or something. And so to stand up against is normally an idea or an opposing view. I'm going to explain another one that is extremely similar in a moment in another headline. And finally, the other piece of vocabulary in this headline that's interesting is to hail someone. So she hails women for standing up against it. She publicly praises these women. We often say things in the context of a star, a famous person. He has been hailed as one of the best singers in the world. So yes, to hail. The next headline is quite simple, and it is the EU needs to stand up to Iran. To stand up to is usually to stand up to a person, but we just learnt the phrasal verb a moment ago, to stand up against. So to stand up against is more an idea. To stand up to is very similar, and the definition is different. To defend yourself against a powerful idea or organization where you've been treated unfairly. And so to stand up to is usually for a person. I stood up to my boss. I stood up to the brutal dictator, something like that. An example from my previous video that I was telling you about, we all stood up to Sarah in a meeting and told her that we wouldn't accept her behavior anymore. So yeah, to stand up to or to stand up against, they're both very similar. You can use them almost interchangeably, except stand up to is for a person more and stand up against is more for an idea. And the last headline that I want to read is shutting down the internet is another brutal blow against women by the Iranian regime. So to shut down someone or something, you may have heard it from a computer shutdown. We can use it as a verb to shut down, but we can also use it as a noun. So we could say the internet shut down, or we can say like as a noun, or we can say to shut down the internet. It's exactly the same. And this means to completely stop, to cease. And also, it has that idea of preventing people from having the freedom of operating this system. So it's a complete shutdown, a complete lockdown. In English, for the pandemic period, we had the idea of a lockdown. So everything was locked down, everything stopped working, or everything was locked up. But the lockdown gives that idea of this reduction in freedom for people. So the shutdown of the internet is something that is having a huge impact in Iran, definitely for the spread and sharing of information. There's a lot of misinformation that's being shared, and also people don't know what exactly is going on. So it's a very serious move by the regime. Maybe an example of to shut down, the police shut the internet down to stop people from communicating. Or you could also say simply the shop shut down its business, so it ceased working or operating. And then the other interesting word in this headline is the adjective brutal. It's a very, very relevant for this topic, and I think there's no other word that really fits better than this word of brutal. It's a brutal regime. They are a brutal leader. And what does it mean? Brutal means cruel, violent, and completely without feelings. So we often talk about a brutal dictator. Another example you could use is he was arrested for the brutal murder of a child. So something with no feelings at all, really cruel and violent. So just to give you a recap of all the vocabulary that we just covered, so we had 7 there. We have the phrasal verb call out someone or something. We also had to stand up to and to stand up against. We had to hail, the verb to hail. Then we had the phrasal verb again, to shut down the internet. And then we had the adjective brutal. So I will leave a PDF guide of all of the vocabulary that we covered, along with some of the things that I learned in my own research. I would definitely recommend a particular podcast episode that I listened to by Mikhail Peterson, who interviewed an Iranian journalist. And also there was the CNN news report by a female Iranian journalist who has been in exile for many years from Iran. So I will link those definitely as well in this PDF guide. So thank you so much for joining me in this video today. I'd love to hear if you would like another type of video like this, maybe covering another news topic in the future. And let me know, what is your favorite vocabulary here? Let me know which one you're going to try to remember and use so you can describe world events in English. So thank you so much for joining me here today, and I will talk to you in the next podcast episode and video.